This afternoon, we will be discussing about the methods in IMRaD format. In this section of a research paper, we will be answering the question, what materials did you use? Or the question, how did you use them? Or should I say both of these questions must be answered in this section of a research paper. But first, let us identify or let us acquaint ourselves with the most essential learning competencies or the skills that we should be able to master at the end of this session. The following are, for letter A, choose appropriate quantitative research design, describe sampling procedure and sample or respondents, constructs an instrument and establishes its validity and reliability, plans data collection procedure, plans data analysis using statistics and hypothesis testing, presents written research methodology. Now let's start our session with the first most essential learning competency, which is choose appropriate quantitative research design. For this, when we talk of research methodology, it refers to the specific procedure or techniques used to identify, select, process, and analyze information about a topic. Okay. Also, it describes how the researcher will answer the research questions in a credible manner. Therefore, we could say that research methodology is where your answers to the who, what, and where, when, and how of your study can be found. Okay. And I also would like to tell you that the research methodology and the research design of your research will actually be dependent upon the research questions that you have formulated. All right? Firstly, the methodology should be the most appropriate to achieve the objectives of the research. Yes, this will only happen if you as a researcher or if you as researchers would be able to find the most suitable research design or methodology for your research. Okay? And secondly, it should be made possible to replicate the methodology used in other researches of the same nature. I always tell this to my students. Let's say, for example, you are having a hard time looking for or thinking of the most appropriate research design or methodology that you want to use in your research. Now, here is the tip. Since one of the tasks we actually gave you is to look for review of related literature and studies or look for previous studies and literatures, once you look for these previous studies, okay, and you find this or you find these review or you find these previous studies related to your research title, to your research topic, given the research questions that you have, you now go to the research design of that or of those previous studies you have looked for or you have come upon, okay, and try to identify the research design and methodology they used in that particular research. Now, if you find that the research variables or the research title that you have is almost the same as the research title they had, then there is a high probability that you can actually make use of that research design or research methodology they used for the research study. Okay, so that is the meaning of replicate or replication. Okay. Now, talking of research design, let me just give you the basics, okay? We will be focusing on description as the purpose, prediction, and explanation. So these are the purposes: description, prediction, explanation. For description, we have observational method, case study method, survey method. So it allows description of behaviors, but it does not support reliable predictions, does not support cause and effect explanation, because the purpose is only to describe. Okay? Prediction. So correlational method, quasi-experimental method. It allows description of behaviors. It supports reliable predictions from one variable to another, but it does not support cause and effect explanations. For the purpose of explanation, we have their experimental method. It allows description of behaviors, supports reliable predictions from one variable to another, and it also supports cause and effect explanation. All right. So what's the difference, if you may ask me, what's the difference between a quasi-experimental method and an experimental method? So in a quasi-experimental method or quasi-experimental design, there is no control group, or the subjects are not actually randomly assigned to groups. Okay? And for a quasi-experimental method, we have the so-called non-equivalent control group design. When we say non-equivalent control group design, this design is similar to the pre-test, post-test control group design. Okay? Except that there is no random assignment of subjects to the experimental and control group designs. Okay? We also have here the time series design. When we say time series design, the researcher periodically observes or measures the subjects. Okay, so there is a time. That's why it's periodically. Okay, the researcher periodically observes or measures the subjects. While when we talk of experimental method, of course, if in quasi-experimental method, there is no control group, in experimental method, there is a control group, and there is also a randomization of subjects or respondents. Okay? This is an example of how we should write our research design section. The study was prepared through explanatory sequential mixed methods design. So for this particular research, the researcher actually used mixed methods, but we will just be focusing on how the research design or how we will write the research design section. So first, you have to mention the kind of methods or the kind of design you used. Okay? And after that, you have to cite to define the definition or to define the particular research method or research design you use. For example, in this example, we have Creswell in Creswell 2018 defined this approach as a design in mixed methods that is comprised of a two-part data collection plan in which the researcher gathers and analyzes quantitative data in the first part to develop and supplement the next qualitative part. This design intended to connect the quantitative results to the qualitative data collection. So in the quantitative part of the study, the researcher determined the level of acceptance of LGBTQ students as perceived by the two groups of respondents. Through statistical evaluation, the researcher computed the significant difference between the responses of the two groups of respondents regarding the teacher's level of acceptance of LGBTQ students. So, in writing your research design section, you should be able to first name the kind of research design or research methodology you used. Second, you have to define it by using a renowned person in the field of research, especially in the field of quantitative research. Okay. And third, you have to discuss how this particular research methodology or design is used or will be used in your research. Next, we have the second most essential learning competency. Describe sampling procedure and sample or respondents of the study. Here, you will have to use the following, or you may choose the following. You may choose one of the following, and actually not just one. It may be a combination of the following sampling techniques that I will be discussing with you. So we have probability sampling or scientific sampling. Here in this particular type of sampling technique, all respondents are given a chance to participate in a research. Okay, so the first one is simple random sampling. When we say simple random sampling, this is a method of choosing samples in which all the members of the population are given an equal chance to be selected as respondents. It is an unbiased way of selection as samples are drawn by chance. There are various ways of getting the samples through simple random sampling. These include the roulette wheel, fishbowl technique, and the use of the table of random numbers. But the most famous way to do this simple random sampling is by the use of fishbowl technique. Okay, how do we do fishbowl technique? First, we need to prepare the sampling frame and the list of the names of all the elements of the population. Write down all the names of the members of the population on strips of papers, one name per strip of paper. Don't forget that. And place the strips of paper in a bowl or container. And lastly, you may now draw samples as desired, meaning before you do this, you should be able to determine the number of respondents that you will be having or determine the sample size that you should have or that you will have. Okay? If you wish to use the table of numbers, you may do the following steps. First, assign a number to each element of the accessible population. When I say element, this is actually the person or the subject or the respondent in your study. Enter the table of random numbers at an arbitrary or random starting point. This can be done by closing your eyes and using a pen to point at a number. Okay, it seems like you're just playing. Continue in a systematic way up or down, to the left or right, or diagonally. So just like I told you, it seems like you're just playing. The direction is not important, but should be determined before starting the process. Okay, so that there will be no bias. This direction shall continue until the total sample is selected. Continue to select numbers until the desired sample is reached. When the total number is bigger than the sample size or has already been drawn, it has to be disregarded and another number must be selected. So that is for simple random sampling. For our stratified random sampling, the population is first divided into strata That's why this is called stratified, okay? Then the sampling follows. For example, age, gender, and educational qualifications are just some of the criteria used in dividing the population into strata. For example, the researcher will study the common causes and effects of smoking among senior high school students. Equal representations of respondents are selected from various samples from public and private schools, and that will be our first stratum or stratum. Then, in the selected public and private schools, samples are chosen from each grade level, and that's going to be our second stratum or stratum. Finally, samples are chosen by gender. So that's going to be our third stratum and stratum. The sampling process is done in stages, starting from the first stratum up to the last stratum. Okay? The last procedure is very important in order to establish the reliability of your research. Okay? Again, the sampling process is done in stages, starting from the first stratum up to the last stratum. That is important. Okay? Next, cluster sampling. This is used in large-scale studies in which the population is geographically spread out. In these cases, sampling procedures may be difficult and time-consuming. For example, a researcher wants to interview 100 senior high school honors students to have enough representatives of the different public schools within the division. Okay? If there are 10 public schools in the division, each cluster or school must have 10 samples to complete the total statistics of 100. Okay? Remember, we have 10 public schools, okay? And as a researcher, I want to interview 100 senior high school honors students. Okay, so I will be having 10 for each, equaling to 100. All right. Systematic sampling is a method of selecting every nth element of the population. It might be every 5th, every 8th, every 9th, every 11th, or every 10th. It depends on the choice of a researcher. After the size of the sample has been determined, the selection of the sample follows. Excuse me. Okay. Next, we have the non-probability sampling. If probability sampling is scientific, this one is non-scientific. So first, we have convenience sampling. Okay. When we say convenience sampling, this is also known as called as accidental or incidental sampling. For example, after you have already determined the size of the sample from your population of elementary pupils, the elementary pupils who are at the moment present during the research visit will be chosen as respondents. Or another example, imagine that you are in front of the Vicente Malapitan Senior High School, in front of the gate of the Vicente Malapitan Senior High School, and you have already determined the size or the sample size, like let's say 100 grade 11 students. Okay. As you see students, okay, or as you enter the gate and you see grade 11 students and You can reach 100. Of course, you need to look for only grade 11 students, and you reach 100 already. Okay, so that's convenience sampling. Next is quota sampling. When we say quota sampling, it is somewhat similar to stratified sampling, in which the population is divided into homogeneous strata, and then sample elements are selected from each stratum or stratum. For example, the researcher desires to have 50 male students. The first 50 male students who are approached by the researcher as respondents will be asked to participate in the survey in this case. So it sounds like convenience sampling, okay, but there is actually a difference, okay? Just stick with the given examples I gave you so that you will not be confused. Again, my first example for the convenience sampling is that after determining the sample size of your population, let's say, for example, you have the elementary pupils or the elementary students, okay? The elementary pupils who are at the moment present during the research visit will be chosen as respondents, while quota sampling will, for example, as a researcher, my desire is to have 50 male students, and then the first 50 male students I approached will now be my respondents. So stick with those given examples. Purposive sampling. Okay, so this is the most commonly used one when it comes to or in non-probability sampling. So when we say purposive sampling, it involves the handpicking of subjects. This is also called judgmental sampling. For example, in a study involving diabetic patients or let's say LGBTQ students, the researcher uses a list of LGBTQ students and chooses the necessary number of respondents. Okay. For snowball sampling or chain referral sampling, this is used when, for example, you are having a hard time looking for or determining if, for instance, your respondent is really a part of the LGBT community. You can actually, for example, you know someone who is part of the LGBT community, and that someone you know will actually refer someone else he or she knows. So that's how it goes, the snowball sampling or chain referral sampling. I just want to remind you that the sampling techniques that you will be using will actually play a significant role in your research. If you did or if you choose the wrong sampling technique for your research, there will be a problem. Or if you make a mistake in doing the procedure of having your sampling techniques or looking for your respondents or the elements of your research, then there will be a problem, because we have the so-called standard and substandard in sampling techniques. Okay, like for instance, you should be able first to, let's say you have your stratified sampling technique. In doing your stratified sampling technique, you have to make sure that you do the process of sampling from the very first or from the very beginning of your sampling technique, from the first stratum up to the last. Okay, that's how stratified sampling should be done. Okay, next, what are the ways to determine the sample size? One of the ways to do this is by the use of Slavin's formula. Actually, Slavin's formula is the most commonly used by researchers to determine their sample size. But there is also a debate that Slavin's formula is no longer recommended. Okay, if you will be attending, for example, recent seminars in research, and probably that person is knowledgeable about statistics, and somehow or there might be a chance for that person to not recommend you this. Okay, but why am I still introducing this to you? It's because it's still under debate. Okay, meaning to say there is no final decision that Slavin's formula is no longer really recommended for researchers, because even up to this time there are a lot of researchers who are actually using Slavin's formula. So let's discuss about Slavin's formula. So this is the formula: n for a sample size equal to capital or uppercase N for population size over 1 plus NE squared. E stands for desired margin of error. Okay, so this is the formula. That's actually very easy to compute. And another way to determine the sample size is by using the Kalmarin's formula, or by using Kalmarin's formula. So there is the formula. So SS for sample size, N for population size, B standard value 2.58 of 1% level probability with 0.99 reliability, SE for sampling error, and P for the largest possible proportion. Actually, there is a table for Kalmarin's formula that you will find on the internet. Okay, you just have to look for Kalmarin's formula table for computed sample size. Okay. Other considerations: sample sizes as small as 30 are generally adequate according to Schott 1990, because that will actually give the approximate normal curve. Okay. When the total population is equal to or less than 100, you can actually take them all, and that is what we call universal sampling. And according to Gay 1976, for descriptive research, 10% to 20% of the total population may be required. Correlational research, 30 subjects or respondents will do. For comparative research, 15 subjects per group can be required. For experimental research, 15 to 30 subjects per group will actually be required. So you don't really need plenty of them, but I just want to remind you that in quantitative research, there is a mantra that a larger sample size, or when you have larger sample size, the more your research findings will be reliable. Okay, that is actually a mantra, or that is actually the mantra in quantitative research. That is why quantitative researchers would have larger sample size compared to qualitative research. Of course, you cannot have a large number of sample size in a qualitative research unless you want to kill yourself. Okay. I'm so sorry. So this is an example on how we can write the sampling techniques and sample or respondents of the study section of our methods section. So, or parts of research paper. The researcher chose the grade 12 senior high students of Vicente Malapita Senior High School, taking up accountancy, business, and management strand as the respondents of the study. This was practical to the researchers since they belong to this class, would save time, energy, money, and effort. So with the first paragraph, you will now have to discuss here who your respondents are, okay? Second paragraph, these grade 12 senior high students had a total of 800. So this is the population. It was large. Thus, the sampling method was applied to come up with an acceptable number of samples. The researcher used Slavin's formula with the desired margin of error of 0.05. They arrived upon computation, they arrived at a sample size of 214. To choose the final 214 samples, simple random sampling was applied to give all elements a chance to be included in the sample. So here, the type of sampling technique is mentioned, beginning with the total population, the Slavin's formula, a way to get the sample size, and finally, the type of sampling technique. That's with the second paragraph. The third paragraph will have all students in each section of batch 2021-2022 during the sampling was equally given a chance since their names were put in a fishbowl. So it was mentioned the type of simple random sampling, fishbowl technique. Then the 214 students picked up comprised the respondents. That's the first example. The second example will be here, which I recommend for my students. The researcher utilized 706 teachers and 8 school principals from 2 schools per school category: small, medium, large, and mega, in the division of Caloocan City, districts 1 to 4. So in the first paragraph, I mentioned the population. Okay. And then, no, that's not actually the population. That is now the sample size. Okay. The researcher has applied the convenience, purposive, and cluster sampling techniques. Convenience sampling is a sampling technique used to pick the subjects nearest and are readily available to participate in a study, and there is a citation. Consequently, the researcher has applied this technique since the participating schools are just within his area. Okay, so after mentioning the type of sampling you use, you have to, don't forget to cite it. I mean, to give citation for that, to define it, and then you have to describe how, or you have to describe or explain how this particular sampling is used in your research study. Okay? And then, on the other hand, purposive sampling was utilized in choosing the principals. They were chosen purposely since they were the principals of the participating schools as defined by Crossman. Purposive sampling is a non-probability sample designed to select an element based on the characteristics set by the researcher common of the population and study subjective. Okay, so same procedure. So I told you a while ago that you can actually use a combination of sampling techniques. Okay, you are not limited to just one sampling technique. Okay. You just have to make sure that you will be choosing the best sampling techniques. So this is just another explanation of another sampling technique, which is a cluster sampling technique or a cluster sampling procedure. Okay, so as per Creswell and Gutterman 2019, cluster sampling is used in large-scale studies, and when it is impossible to choose samples in separate individuals, and is practical in the cluster or by isolating a set of persons. Thus, the researcher used the sampling procedure since he was able to get the complete list of groups in the population. And there is another one, the last paragraph. To ensure the proportionality of the respondents in every department in every participating school, the researcher has applied proportionate sampling. What do we mean by proportionate sampling? Let us see if the researcher will be able to define that in this paragraph. In every participating school, he obtained the number of teachers who have been staying in school for 1 year and above. Then the researcher computed the sample size by using Slavin's formula to ensure equal distribution of respondents to represent the entire population from each department. So that's the meaning of proportionate sampling. So in every participating school, the researcher got the number of teachers who have been staying in school for 1 year and above. And then by the use of Slovin's formula, he was able to get the sample size in every department. Okay. In every department, there are 8 departments. We have English or math, English, Filipino, Science, ESP, MAPE, TLE. What else did I not mention? Say it for our own sake. Okay. All right. So next, most essential learning competency. So we have construct an instrument and establishes its validity and reliability. So let's now proceed. So these are the most frequently used data collection in doing quantitative research. Number 1 is documentary analysis. What do we mean by documentary analysis? For example, you want to conduct a research study wherein you want to get the academic performance which will be represented by the general weighted average of the students. So in order to do that, you may wish to include the card or the Form 138 or SF9 of your respondents. Okay. Or probably if you are studying about health-related topics, you may wish to have access with their medical records. So that is documentary analysis. When we say interview, okay, I know you did interview when you were in grade 11 because you had practical research 1, qualitative research. So in doing an interview, there are actually 3 types. We have unstructured, structured, semi-structured. When we say unstructured interview, it happens when you conduct an interview without any preparation. Meaning to say you will have your interview with your participants without anything at hand. You will just ask questions as the need arises. Okay. For example, you have your first question like, the first question, for example, is who motivated you to become a teacher? And then your participant will say something, and then If you think there is a need to ask another question, then you will be asking that question. Okay, so unstructured interview is an interview process without any preparation. And when we say structured interview, you have here now your, for example, you have here your your interview protocol, okay, or interview schedule. In that interview protocol, you have there your series of questions that you wish to ask to your participants. So meaning to say you have prepared your questions already. And when we say semi-structured, this is actually a combination of unstructured and structured. Meaning you have partially prepared and partially not prepared. Just like you have your interview protocol, or you have your questions at hand, and then through the process of your interview, you seem to be interested to ask, another question which actually arises because of the answers or responses of your participants. That could actually be done. So that is semi-structured. Okay. Observation, we have structured and unstructured. Okay. So for observation, it enables the researcher actually to participate actively in the conduct of the research. Okay. Here, you may have observation checklist. Okay. And that's going to be structured. And unstructured, you don't have anything at hand again. You will just take down notes, every possible observation that you will have, or any possible things that you think important. Okay, that is observation. All right. Now, you can actually have another way to do observation is by the use of, or should I say, what do you call this? Media mediated observation, something like that, like by the use of CCTV. Okay, you can actually use that for your observation. Okay. Another one is physiological measures. All right. Physiological measures are actually considered as more accurate and objective than other data collection methods. It's just that it requires knowledge in manipulating the instruments like thermometer, stethoscope, weighing scale, etc. Okay. Another one, psychological tests. Okay, if you are familiar with the Minnesota multi-phasic personality inventory, or MMPI, okay, or also the Edwards Personal Preference Schedule, EPPS, okay. So those are examples of psychological tests, but I don't think I have to discuss it with you thoroughly because this is not actually suitable for you. I mean, conducting research in this field is not suitable for you because we are just doing practical research. From the word itself, practical, practice. This is just practice, okay? So you are not yet ready for that kind of research. Questionnaire is the most commonly used instrument in research. It is a list of questions about a particular topic with spaces provided for the response to each question and intended to be answered by a number of persons, okay? A lot of researchers use this because this is less expensive. It yields more honest responses. It guarantees confidentiality, and it minimizes biases based on question phrasing modes. Okay. The questionnaire can be structured or unstructured. When we say structured questionnaires, it provides possible answers and respondents just have to select from them. So meaning these are prepared, the questionnaires are prepared, and there are already choices, okay? When we say unstructured questionnaires, they do not provide options, and the respondents are free to give whatever answer they want. It's just that this is, for me, this is time consuming. I mean, this will require you a lot of time in, tabulating the responses or analyzing the data, unlike with the structured questionnaire. Let us now proceed to the types of question. But before I proceed there, I just want to emphasize now the importance of your review of related literature and studies. In a full-blown research, review of related literature and studies are very important because in doing your research questionnaire, the indicators should be derived from the review of related literature and studies in order for your questionnaire to be valid. Okay, that's why in a panel, when a panelist asks a researcher, the question is, how can you say, or how will you describe the validity of your research questionnaire? One of the best answers there actually is that the research questionnaire or the indicators of the research questionnaire are derived from the research or review of related literatures and studies. Therefore, the indicators are supported by the review of related literatures and studies. And aside from that, that will also inform the panelists that you as researchers have in-depth knowledge of your research study. Why? Because you've gathered a lot of review of related literature and studies. You've read a lot. Okay? Now let's proceed with the types of question. The first type is yes or no question. Like, you will just ask questions answerable by yes or no. Like, have you vaccinated? Or were you vaccinated already? Or have you been vaccinated already? Okay. Or are you a senior high student? So yes or no. For recognition type, there are alternative responses provided, and the respondent simply will just choose among the given choices. It may also contain close-ended questions. Okay, like for example, specialization in technical vocational track. Okay, we have home economics, agriculture, welding, health, hair culture. Or it may be about educational qualifications, elementary graduate, high school graduate, technical graduate. Okay, that is for recognition type. For completion type, the respondents are asked to fill in the blanks with the necessary information. Questions are actually open-ended. Okay, like for example, when I see a barking dog, I feel blank. So that is completion type. Okay, so it's open-ended. Coding type. When we say coding type, numbers are assigned to names, choices, and other pertinent data. For example, we have sex, male, female. For male, your code will be number 1. For female, your code will be number 2. So that is coding type. And when we say subjective type, the respondents are free to give their own opinions about an issue of concern. So it's like what you did when you were in grade 11, when you did practical research 1. If you interviewed your participants and they were free to give their opinions, so that is subjective type. Combination type. When we say combination type, from the word itself, the questionnaire is a combination of 2 or more types of questions. It could be yes or no recognition type, yes or no completion type, subjective recognition, or subjective completion type. All right. Now let's discuss about the wordings. Wordings of questions. So first thing that you should always remember in doing in formulating your questions, you should state questions in affirmative rather than in a negative manner. Okay? Why is it so? Because this will actually a way to avoid confusion on the part of your respondents. Okay. Number 2, avoid ambiguous questions. Avoid ambiguous questions by omitting the words many, always, usually, few. You can actually, if you want to, for example, you are measuring or you have a question, to what extent do the senior high students play online games? You may put there never. You may use Likert scale. So you may, later on we will be discussing about Likert scale. So you may put there, for example, never, rarely, oftentimes, and always. Okay, instead of putting the words many, always, usually, few within the statement. Okay, you may do that by using Likert scale. Second, avoid double negative questions, because double negative questions will actually be positive. Okay. Next, avoid double-barreled questions, meaning asking 2 questions in an item. Okay. For example, will you be happy joining the SSG and be given additional, for example, recognitions? That's a double-barreled question, and that should be avoided. Next, what are the characteristics of a good data collection instrument? First, it must be concise, yet able to elicit the needed data. Actually, you should avoid making more than 5 pages of questionnaire. The desired number of pages is from 1 to 4 pages, okay? And it must be answered in just 10 minutes. When it comes with the number of words, there should be 20 less than. Okay? It seeks information that cannot be obtained from other sources like documents that are available at hand. Okay, for example, you will be using documentary analysis and there is missing information that you want to acquire. So you will do that by the use of a questionnaire. Then you shouldn't ask questions that would elicit information which you already have. Okay? Next, questions must be arranged in sequence from the simplest to the complex, so that it will not psychologically burden your respondents. Remember, in doing our research, we also put into consideration the physiological and psychological aspects of our respondents. Okay, in research ethics, as much as possible, we do not want to burden our respondents. Okay, so from the simplest to the complex. Next, it must also be arranged according to the questions posed in the statement of the problem, so that it will be easier to check whether you are able to make your questionnaire aligned with the research questions, and also to the rest of the parts of your research paper. Because from the statement of the problem, okay, your questionnaire, your presentation of data with tables, it should be arranged chronologically in the same manner. All right? Even your review of related literature. Okay. Even your review of related literature should be arranged in accordance with how the research questions or the questions in the statement of the problem are arranged. Okay? That is for easy monitoring, for easy checking. Next, it should pass validity and reliability. So this is one of the most important aspects of a research. Validity and reliability. Later on, we will be discussing about validity and reliability. Next, it must be easily tabulated and interpreted. That is the reason why we should have it validated first, because in the validity process, actually, you will be able to determine already if this can be easily tabulated or not. Okay? I remembered when I did my master's thesis, I actually administered my questionnaire twice. Why did I do that? Because my first administration was a struggle for me. How did I say so? Because when I tabulated the data and I tried to think of my statistical procedure or statistical analysis, I couldn't think of how I will do it or how I supposed to do it. Okay, that's why I re-administered my questionnaire in different format. Okay, that's why I would like to remind you that when you do your questionnaire, you should now predict, or you should predict already the statistical treatment that you will be using, and then how you will tabulate it. Everything must be predicted already. You should have it in mind already. Okay? Okay, so a while ago I told you about Likert scale, And here are now the commonly used scales in an instrument. So first is the Likert scale. It looks like this. So for example, you have your research questionnaire. So you have your indicators. For example, I am interested in solving numbers. You have their SA, A, D, S, D. SA stands for strongly agree. A stands for agree. D stands for disagree. And SD stands for strongly disagree. Okay. These letters actually represent a particular value. All right, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or here we have here 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's gonna be 4 as the highest, for example. Okay, so 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, why is it 4, 3, 2, 1? So that there will be neutral. There will be no neutral choices. Okay. Before we have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 like that, because 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and most of the respondents would answer 3 if they are unsure. So now with this kind of Likert scale, they will be forced to think, will it be strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? There is no neutral. Next, we have semantic differential scale. What is the difference? Actually, the difference is that this is easier to do or to compose because you just have to put their competent. For example, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 incompetent. So the respondent will just encircle whether it's 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. Okay. Next, that we need to discuss is how we will write it in the data gathering instrument section of our research paper using IMRaD format. So here the following instruments were used that's the tense of the verb past tense to be able to gather pertinent data to complete this study. So survey questionnaire, meaning to say the researcher used survey questionnaire. So you have to describe or say something about survey questionnaire. The researcher conducted the study with the use of structured questionnaire as the primary source of data in getting the perceptions of the respondents as regard the school principal's interpersonal and administrative skills and its effects on the teacher's performance. All right. And then the questionnaire is prepared in advance. So this is a structured questionnaire in relation to a topic that the researcher desires to cover and in acquiring enough information for further clarification of the question stated in the statement of the problem in chapter 1. So desire should be in past tense, desired. This contained lists of questions that were divided into parts with an intended purpose. So you have to describe the parts of the research questionnaire. So as to the school principals, there are 3 parts. So part 1, what is in the part 1? Deals with their profile without S, such as sex, age, civil status, highest educational attainment, length of service as a school administrator, and position. Okay. Part 2 is a self-assessment of the school principals on how they perceive their interpersonal and administrative skills. On interpersonal skills, there are 5 classifications as to role in management, learning and training, understanding and motivating teachers, positive teachers' attitudes, and problem-solving techniques. And part 3 encompasses the interpersonal and administrative related challenges encountered by the school principals and their ways or resolutions to address the challenges encountered. And as to the teachers, there are 4 parts. So part 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, you have to describe what is in these or what are found with these parts or in these parts of the research questionnaire. Let's now talk about the validity and reliability of an instrument. Okay. First, when we say validity, This refers to the ability of your research questionnaire to measure what it intends to measure. Okay. For example, your research talks about online gaming addiction and academic performance of senior high students. Will your questionnaire be able to measure what it intends to measure? Okay, that's going to be now validity. So there are types of validity. First, we have phase validity, also known as logical validity. So phase validity involves an analysis of whether the instrument is using a valid scale. Okay. The procedure calls only for intuitive judgment. All right. The researcher determines phase validity by looking at the features of the instrument, which includes the size of the font or the typeface spacing, size of the paper, the margins, okay, also the instructions, whether the instructions are clearly defined, okay, because these things are actually important as they may distract the respondents from answering the research questionnaire, okay, and that will actually psychologically affect the way they will answer the research questionnaire. Next, we have content validity. When we say content validity, this is determined by studying the questions to see whether they are able to elicit the necessary information. Okay, content validity will be done by subjecting your research instrument to groups of experts. 3 or 5 experts would suffice. Okay, meaning they are enough to determine the validity. You just have to make sure that they are experts in the field of research you are conducting. All right. 3, criterion-related validity or equivalence test. What do we mean by that? This type of validity is an expression of how scores from the test are correlated with an external criterion. Okay, for example, concurrent. We have concurrent. When I say concurrent, for example, you have found a standardized test and you have your researcher-made questionnaire. Okay, now you will administer that standardized test, and after that you will retrieve it, and you will now also administer your researcher-made instrument, okay, and retrieve it, and you may now compute for the correlation index, okay. So in this manner, validity is established with an accepted and a billed second test that measures what the researcher is trying to measure. Okay. Now, we have predictive. Well, the best example here is the aptitude test. Why? Because predictive refers to how well the test predicts some future behavior of the examinees. All right? Meaning, how will you perform in the future setting? Okay. Next, we have reliability. Okay. For reliability, when we say reliability, this means consistency of results. When I say consistency of results, for example, a lady who is monitoring her weight uses a weighing scale, okay? early in the morning, her weight is 55 pounds. And then in the afternoon, it became, let's say, 65 pounds. And it became 70 in the evening. So in this case, the weighing scale is not reliable since it gave different results. So that is reliability. Okay. Now we have test, retest, or stability. Oh, sorry. Test, retest, or stability test. I'm sorry. That is a stability test. Okay. So how do we do this? So the same test is given to a group of respondents twice. Okay. The scores in the first test are correlated with the scores in the second test. When there is a high correlation index, it means that there is also a high reliability of the test. Okay. Number 2 is internal consistency. When we say internal consistency, if the test in question is designed to measure a single basic concept, it is reasonable to assume that a respondent who gets one item right is likely to correctly answer another item that is similar. In other words, items sought must be correlated with each other, and the test should be internally consistent. Okay, the first type could be split half, or will be split half, or is split half. So it is a method of establishing internal consistency wherein a test is given only once to the respondents. If, for example, the test has 100 items, you have to divide it into either a first half and a second half, or a half containing all odd numbers and even numbers. Now, the scores of the two halves are then correlated using the Spearman-Brown prophecy formula. So you can research for Spearman-Brown prophecy formula, okay, if you want to use that. Okay, split half. We also have the Kuder-Richardson test or formula. This method measures the extent to which items in one form of a test share commonalities with one another as do the items of an equivalence test form. Okay, so this is also called item total correlation. It requires one administration of the test, a determination of whether an individual test taker correctly answers each item or not, and the computation of the standard deviation of the distribution when the reliability coefficient is high. The test items are said to be homogeneous. The internal consistency method takes into account the test itself and its administration. The consistency of test scores is determined over different parts of the test. And you may also use Cronbach's alpha. Cronbach's alpha is actually one of the famous formulas researchers use to measure internal consistency of a test or of a questionnaire. Okay. Okay, let's now move on to the next most essential learning competency, which is plans or student plans data collection procedure. So here are the things that you should bear in mind when you do data gathering procedure. First, you should have your permit to conduct the study. Okay, only if possible. Just like, for example, if you may actually, well, if it's only possible, like you may write or you may ask permission from the principal of our school before you do your research study, okay? Or you may actually ask your practical research teachers to give you permission to conduct your research study. All right. Of course, by approving your research title, that means we allow you to conduct your research study. All right. Next, you should have letter to the respondents stipulating the privacy or confidentiality of the data to be collected, and also informing them of what the research will be about. All right. Next, mention the informed consent and or assent. So when we say informed consent, for example, you have minor participants or respondents. So you have to ask for the consent of the parents. So we call that informed consent. And informed assent, informed, that should be informed consent, ED, informed consent, and informed assent. Informed assent will be for the respondents or participants who are not able or who cannot give you a consent because they are minor age. Okay. Next, describe the process of administration and retrieval of the instrument. You only have to describe it from the very beginning. How did you do it? Like, the researchers asked permission from the principal, and upon approval, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you just have to describe it. Next is student plans data analysis using statistics and hypothesis testing if appropriate. Okay, hypothesis testing for correlational and experimental research based. All right. So there are actually two types or branches of statistics. We have descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. So for descriptive statistics, we have frequency distribution, okay, proportion, percentage, measure of central tendency. Under that, we have mode, median, mean, variability of dispersion, range, average deviation, variance, standard deviation. I actually don't have to go deeper discussing these points because this is the reason why your statistics and probability is a prerequisite subject before taking this practical research too. Once again, if you failed in statistics and probability, you were not allowed to take practical research too, because we have this statistical analysis. So for frequency distribution, it is the record of the number of individuals or cases located in each category on the scale of measurement. Okay, for example, and actually we have also this so-called frequency distribution table where you will see everything. Okay, proportion, it is the total frequency divided by the number of cases in each category. It can be derived from the frequency distribution. That's what I told you, frequency distribution table. Okay, percentage, it is the proportion expressed in percentage. Okay, computed as proportion times 100. Measure of central tendency, we have, or how do we define measure of central tendency? It indicates where the center of the distribution tends to be located. It refers to the typical or average score in a distribution. So for mode, this is actually referred to the most frequently occurring score in a distribution. So for example, you have your test scores. So if you would be looking for the mode, the most frequently recurring, okay, or occurring, should I say, score, that's going to be your mode. Median, it is the middlemost, that's why median. It is the middlemost value in a distribution below or above, which is exactly 50% of cases that are found. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, there is actually a formula for that. Yes. Mean, it is the exact mathematical center of a distribution. It is equal to the sum of all scores divided by the number of cases, and we also have a formula for that. Okay. Variability of dispersion. So when we say variability of dispersion, it refers to the extent and manner in which the scores in a scores what do I mean is that it refers to the extent and manner in which the scores in a distribution differ from each other. For range, it is the difference between the highest value and the lowest value in the given distribution. So that's actually the formula. Highest value minus the lowest value. Okay. Average deviation, it is the measure of variation that takes into consideration the deviations of the individual scores from the mean. And variance, it is the square of the standard deviation. So meaning to say you have first to get the standard deviation before you get the variance. So standard deviation, it is the square root of the quotient of the total square deviation of the mean and the total number of cases. So that's how we compute for standard deviation. All right, so if you want to know more, or to have a deeper knowledge about this, you can actually watch videos on YouTube. Next, we have inferential statistics. So if I'm not mistaken, of course not, Ma'am Andrea already discussed about the types of variable, including the nominal variable, numerical variable, ordinal variable, okay, ratio, interval. Ma'am Andrea discussed that already. Okay. For the purpose of this presentation, I will be just focusing on nominal and numerical because most of the data that you will be having will fall into this category. So, for example, you have your first variable and second variable. Your first variable, for example, is nominal, and your second variable is nominal. What are the correlation tools that you can use? You may actually use the chi-square test of goodness fit, chi-square test of independence, lambda coefficient. Okay. And if you have your nominal and numerical data, you may use chi-square test of goodness fit, regression analysis, point by serial coefficient of correlation. Okay. And then you may also, for example, you have numerical data and numerical data, both are numerical data. So you will be using Pearson product moment correlation, Spearman rank order correlation, and gamma coefficient. So you only have to identify whether your first variable is nominal, numerical, and your second variable is nominal or numerical. And I have given you already the correlational tools or statistical treatment that you may use. All right. So for example, my topic is correlate math and English performance. So I'm talking about performance here, and that will be represented by test scores. Therefore, I will have both numerical data. So I will be using Pearson product moment correlation, Spearman rank order correlation, gamma coefficient. Okay. Another example, correlate gender and math performance. So gender, that is male, female, that is nominal. And then math performance in terms of test score. So that's going to be, I will be using chi-square test of goodness fit, regression analysis, point by serial coefficient of correlation. Or correlate gender and work performance in terms of excellent, poor, etc. So I will be having, or I will have both nominal data, and I may use chi-square test of goodness fit, chi-square test of independence, or lambda coefficient. So once again, my dear students, you only have to determine the kind of data or the type of data you have, and you have now, I have already given you the statistical treatment or statistical tools that you may use. You only have to decide which one is your desired statistical tool. Okay? Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to run us, your PR2 teachers, a message. And with that, I can say now that you are now ready to present your written research methodology to us, your practical research to teachers. Again, if you have any questions, just feel free to message us. Stay safe, everyone, and please don't forget to accomplish the Google Forms that I will be sending you. Bye-bye. Stay safe.